So Joe, thank you for taking the time to sit with us and tell us a little bit about your experience with the BOCES as well as the Farmingdale District. As a parent, I know the frustration of having to advocate for your child and feeling unheard. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience and your story?
My son Joseph he graduated in June of 2021 from Nassau BOCES Center for Community Adjustment. Farmingdale students that go to school out of district, like my son, especially at the BOCES, encounter a lot of headwinds when it comes to the IEP. With BOCES in particular, the IEPs are printed by the district without the goals. In fact, the IEP is blank where the goals should be. The whole premise of the idea is for the CSE members to get around the table and generate goals in real time during the meeting minutes of the CSE meeting. But what happens is the district allows BOCES to dictate the goals, to predetermine the goals in advance of the meeting.
Before you even get a chance to sit down.
Before we get to the table. Or if there is a challenge to the goals that are being proposed, the BOCES then generates what's called the ASP. This is the ASP.
So it's their version of the IEP.
The district accepts the ASP subsequent to the meeting with the goals to merge into the IEP. But if you look at the law, the procedural safeguards, the special education regulations on the NYSEG website, or if you go to the Department of Education or the IDEA website, there is no language about the ASP.
So it's not even an approved process
This
at
is
all.
specific to Nassau BOCES.
Okay.
My brother is a superintendent of a district out in Suffolk County, and Eastern Suffolk BOCES and Western Suffolk BOCES do not use the ASP, only Nassau BOCES.
Okay.
So I don't know if
And
that's
it's
changed.
not to the benefit of the student or the parents as you're trying to create goals for your child.
No, and let me tell you why. The IEP is considered a living document.
Right.
And it's the core of how services are delivered. It's a legal document that actually lays out the mandates for how services should be delivered during the school year. But then the ASP gets generated and pushed into the IEP with data that's inconsistent with the IEP.
Right.
So
And then they don't want your feedback afterwards.
Well, it lends itself to confusion on how the services should be delivered or who's responsible to deliver the services.
And that's a big one. Who's responsible? Because when you were explaining to me that BOCES will point back to the district and the district back to BOCES, that has to be so frustrating as a parent.
Well, on the IEP, there's a section called coordination of transitional activities. And then there's a column that says who's responsible. And this is very important in New York State, students from the age of 15, beginning at the age of 15, considerations, and it's by law that there are considerations put forth by the district in conjunction with the parents about how to prepare that child for aging out, for post-secondary life. So with respect to the coordinated set of transitional activities on the IEP, it labels clearly who's responsible for delivering those services, after they're customized in accordance with the abilities and interests of the student. But then BOCES comes out with an ASP with that data generated in a way that's inconsistent with the district. So the district's IEP says the district is responsible, Farmingdale School District.
Right.
But the ASP says Nassau BOCES is responsible. So my son got zero coordination of transitional activities. I reached out to Farmingdale, the Farmingdale High School transitional coordinator, Evelise Powers, on Facebook. On the SEPTA webpage, when I asked a generic question about how the who can help my son with a transitional plan upon exiting. I was pointed to Ivelisse Powers. She came onto the page. Oh, how can I help you? Reach out anytime. But after I identified that my son was a BOCES student, she went
Radio silent on you.
radio silent. I reached out to Brian Norton, Don Cassidy, Paul Defendini, the Board of Education members, and no one could explain why my son was not worthy of a transition plan.
Right.
Or
Now, one of our board members, I think Suzanne D'Amico, is one of the SEPTA advocates, correct? Was she not able to assist you?
Sue D'Amico is a fellow special needs mom and a board member. When she ran for office, I voted for her. I was excited about the prospect of having some representation on the board. Sadly, she has been unresponsive to any of my concerns. I've written to her directly when addressing the board, and she does not respond to me. Wow. You would think that in a place of power that she would use that power to help the population, her fellow families, her fellow special education families. I haven't seen that. On a person to person, I've always thought she was nice. I've met her at events at the Farmingdale Library, through Triple P. Krista Lucarelli's the director here, and she does a lot of wonderful things for the population. So, whenever there was a conference or a dance or anything for the population, my son would take part and I would see Sue. She was always a sweetheart, and I always thought she was great. Unfortunately, in her position of power, she has disappointed me.
Okay. Now, this week we saw Michael Goldberg get an award from Nassau BOCES. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts there.
Okay, BOCES has a program where they solicit funds from businesses and parents to award a grant once a year to a bunch of awardees, recipients. It's a transactional grant based on the bylaws from Nassau BOCES and the 501(c)(3) nonprofit, the Nassau BOCES Educational Foundation that issues those awards. The recipients are supposed to be able to account for how the money is spent, and the awardees. I don't think it's a coincidence that I've been giving BOCES a hard time and the district a hard time, and Paul Defendini received an award that same year. Michael Goldberg received an award. The principal at Nassau BOCES CCA, Christopher Kowalchuk, I pointed out that he was on trial for beating up a student on a bus.
Oh my goodness.
My son's friend on a bus. I believe it's still in Supreme Court right now. And I questioned the fitness of his ability to run the school where my son was in attendance. I experienced retribution as a result. The superintendent tried to get me banned from the premises at the school.
All for speaking up about.
But it's not legal. My attorney got it reversed. But this is the extent to which these people in power will go to suppress inconvenient information from being revealed.
And I think we're all seeing that, no matter what the topic, but specifically for your situation, what we've received is parents such as yourself privately sharing this with you. And you're one of the very few people who are willing to put your voice out there because the retribution is that severe, because they feel that they should not be challenged or questioned. And that's not democracy. That's not how local government should work. So I want to switch gears a little bit because you mentioned something that I thought was really important, the American Rescue Dollars.
Mm-hmm. The American Rescue Plan, every district had to apply for federal relief in the wake of COVID and the pandemic. When the application is submitted, I should be able, I'm going to foil the district's application from NYSED or from the federal government to find out how our district obtained the relief, on what basis.
Right.
It's my understanding that every single district had the discretion to offer extended ESY, extended services, extended year services for individuals with special needs to make up for loss of learning, especially those that were scheduled to graduate, such as my son. Well, this district could not get rid of my son fast enough. I wrote to Brian Norton, Paul Defendini, and Donald Cassidy about the prospect of my son receiving an ESY, and not only did they ignore me, but they went straight to push him out without even offering him an exit plan. I had to write to the Board of Education months later just to get his diploma and his exit summary. They were supposed to coordinate with Access VR. That was not done. Nassau BOCES discriminated against my son on the post-secondary level. He was supposed to attend Nassau BOCES for his diagnostic vocational evaluation. I had to, Disability Rights New York, attorneys represented my son and prevailed in getting my son his post-secondary vocational assessment. But it was after 8 months. He
Wow.
went 8 months without it. So the district not only dropped the ball on the coordination of his transitional services, but when I reached out to them to let them know how my son was being obstructed, they did nothing to help.
The current board really touts that our budget goes 1 in 5 students is special education, special needs, and that the significant portion of our budget expenditure is to help and support those students. As a special education parent, what is your feedback on that?
Here's what I'll say about our district. Okay, I'm a parent of 3 children. I happen to know firsthand that this district is wonderful if your child is an academic or athletic scholar. My son is doing very well. He's currently at Duke Law School right now. He went to Cornell. He's doing very, very well. He played football. He played baseball. Joseph's older brother. But when it came, and my daughter also, my daughter Mia, she's doing very well. But she's working full time in a hotel. But my son Joseph encountered so many setbacks, and they were done in such a passive-aggressive way. They're not forthcoming about the obstructions to the special needs student population.
So you feel like if you're outside the mainstream,
They'll scream from the rooftops.
they'll take the awards.
No, they'll scream from the rooftops about their special needs Olympics that are coming up. But let me say this. I described it as wolves in sheep's clothing. And this is why. Because they will exploit the population that they are underserving for revenue.
Yeah. Ralph Morales, the current president of the school board, have you had any direct interactions with him around any of these topics?
Yeah, he was copied on every single email and chose not to respond for many years. He tried to undermine a post of mine on Facebook, with a group of parents that are trying to inform themselves about voting with their eyes wide open about what the issues are, how the money is being spent, how the children are being served. But he took issue with some truthful posts that I put out there. So I responded, and he went silent. He really couldn't answer about the inconsistencies with how the American Rescue Plans were applied for and for what purpose, versus how they were expended once received.
Right.
Okay,
And
they
he's
were
supposed
not
to be the
expended
steward
as intended.
as the board president, he's the steward of our taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, but
And
back
there's
in
the
the
one
day,
that-
it was Michael Goldberg,
Sure.
and Michael Goldberg also gave me a hard time. The special education parents don't ask for much. They ask for fairness. They ask for equity. These services were not equitable when it came to technology for BOCES students. In the BOCES school that my son attended at CCA, children were punished if they had technology in the school. I had to bring in an assistive technology evaluator from District 75 to enable my son to walk into his school with a computer without getting suspended.
Wow.
Guidance counseling, okay? It's a right afforded to every single student in New York State. My son did not have a guidance counselor for 7 years as a BOCES
And
student.
how did they justify that?
They don't, they ignore
Can you hold up this folder for me? This is 1 year's folder, correct? You have one for every year.
Yeah.
As a parent of a special education child, you had to create your own guidance plan for them because you weren't receiving that.
Well, to properly advocate, I armed myself with information. I made sure I was never the smartest person in the room when I talked to people, so I can learn from attorneys and educators in my family and special needs parents, so that I can share the wealth of information with the other parents that were struggling and still are struggling to this day. Our district does not do the right thing by individuals with disabilities. And when they do have an enormous amount of power to undermine this population. You know, that's really, I'm not here to attack anyone personally, but there are a lot of contradictions in how services are delivered compared to how it's purported by the board and by the district.
I have to say, I'm very thankful that you took the time to speak with us today, and I know there's so much more. What can special education parents do? Is there groups they should be part of to help get connected with other parents to advocate? Are they, already involved in that?
Here's what I'll say.
Outside of the school district,
Well, for parents of children with special needs, inform yourselves. Do not rely on the district to help you because they won't. Please reach out to me if anyone needs information. I'm a support broker now with OPWDD. I assist people with self-direction. I'm also a council member for Family Support Services of Long Island. I get involved. I try to inform myself as much as possible so that I can plan for my son's future and he doesn't fall through the cracks. Unfortunately, individuals with special education, face a lot of unfortunate futures, whether it be, sitting on the couch or winding up in jail or in the hospital if they're not properly supported, over their behaviors or their, learning disabilities, when remember, these kids are segregated throughout their entire school life. My son was segregated with, 5 or 6 kids, mostly male, and then he aged out into society with all abilities, male and female, and it is a culture shock that as his natural support, I work on it with him every day. Today's his first day at pre-vocational training at Life's Work. I'm working very hard to help him just kind of break through any stigmas, being stigmatized, and just helping him cultivate his strengths and so that he can have the best life possible. I know plenty of parents that are intelligent, loving, caring parents, but because they're not properly informed, their kids are being underserved by their district, and those kids unfortunately have uncertain futures. So I just would like to put myself out there to network. If any parent needs to speak with me or would like to talk to me or teach me something.
Right. Every day is a school day. You can always
I'm
learn.
here. I would love to talk to other parents. I happen to know that there are a lot of parents that are afraid of retribution by this district for supporting the opponents, the candidates. So they're not on Facebook. But I think that there's a swelling of support, an undercurrent of support as a result. All these years I've been writing to the Board of Education, to Paul Defendini, to John Lawrence, his predecessor. But not once have I been asked to sit down the way you've asked me to sit down and ask really what's going on, or just to understand how the population is being underserved. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us speak with you. I think your son is very lucky to have you as an advocate, and I think our community is lucky to have you as an advocate.
Thank you.
So I look forward to working with you closely in the future.
So do I. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Vote.
I love it.